But I think the future of the Blue Dogs is very strong because I think more and more people, not only in Arkansas but across this country, are sick and tired of the extremes of both parties. The majority of the people in this country are in the middle, which is exactly where members of the fiscally conservative Democratic Blue Dog Coalition are. I co-chair the group. I'll continue to be a co-chair through the remainder of this Congress.
The way the legislature redrew your district, going up into traditionally more Republican areas, did that factor into your decision?
It's been reported that those are traditionally more Republican areas. Look, I mean, everybody knows the 3rd District is pretty much a Republican district, and as a result, you haven't seen Democratic campaigns well funded in that region. The majority of the counties I picked up, as I understand it, have a Democratic county judge, and a lot of them have Democratic state legislators. That did not factor into my decision at all.
What was the biggest factor in your decision not to run? Or was it?
I celebrated, my wife Holly and I celebrated our 28th wedding anniversary Saturday. And, I'm in my 11th year of spending at least half of each week away from her and away from my children. And like so many of the American people today, I'm fed up with Congress. I went there to try to find common ground, and I'm very frustrated with the divisiveness and the highly charged partisan atmosphere that we find in Washington today. And then finally, again, I don't know if I'm running for governor in 2014 or not. I'll make that decision sometime in 2013. But I do know this: if I'd ran for re-election and won, then I think I would have closed that door. I would not have that opportunity. So I've thought about it a lot. I don't know how there's no direct flight. There's no easy way to get there from my office in D.C. to my home in Prescott. It's about 8 hours. So that's 16 hours a week traveling, and then 4 to 5 days a week in Washington voting. I don't know how I could do that job, my congressional job, well, and run a gubernatorial campaign well, if that's what I choose to do. And so, to me, it was a pretty easy decision. If I ran for re-election, I'd been shutting the door on a potential race for governor, and I was not prepared to shut that door. I don't think it would have been fair to the people of the 4th District if I ran for re-election and then ran for governor. I mean, the next term will begin in January 2013. Any governor's race will probably begin by what, June of 2013? And so I just don't think it would have been fair to the people of the 4th District to try to be their congressman, their representative, and a candidate for governor at the same time. As I said earlier, I don't think it would have been fair to the people of the 4th District. I don't think it would have been fair to my potential supporters in a governor's race.
Is there any doubt? I mean, you said a couple times if you won re-election. Is there any doubt you would have?
Well, I'm just trying to be humble here, but look, according to Charlie Cook, if you look at Charlie Cook, there were like 84 Democrats in Republican-leaning districts last year. 17 of us survived. Of the 84, it's my understanding I won by the biggest margin at 18 points. I do not even have an opponent right now. So my decision to get out had more to do with being a family decision and giving me at least the option to consider a governor's race in 2014. It really it wasn't a decision based on my fearing re-election. The new district is not as Democratic as the old one, but I do believe that a Democrat can win in it. And here's what I think is important. I think it's important that my seat open up in 2012, which is a presidential year. I'll be honest with you. I'll just talk politics a minute. I would have never beat Jay Dickey in 98 or 2002. I knew I had to run against him in a presidential election year because turnout among Democrats will be higher. I think it would have been difficult, perhaps, for Democrats to hold my seat in 2014. I think it's very doable in 2012 with the right candidate. I can think of 10 or 12 potential candidates, but I'll let you figure out who they are, and I'm sure a lot of names will rise to the surface in the coming weeks and the coming months. And one of the reasons I'm doing this now is to give my party time to go out and recruit a good, strong candidate that can hold this seat.
What will determine whether you run for governor?
You know, it'll be a family decision. I'm focused now on cutting spending, reducing our deficits, putting people back to work. I'm gonna, and this, I think it's going to be fun. I mean, the whole time you're in Congress, you have to divide your time between trying to do your job and raise money for reelection. I'm no longer raising money as of 10 o'clock this morning, and it feels like a huge burden off of my shoulders, and I'm planning on committing the next 17 months to focusing on the job and how we can cut spending and how we can get our fiscal house back in order and how we can put more people in this country back to work. And then when I leave office in January 2013, sometime after that I'll make a decision, but I honestly haven't made one yet, and whatever I do at the end of the day, it will be a family decision and what I think is best for my family and best for Arkansas.
Congressman, what can you say to Arkansans who don't understand what's happening in Washington with the debt ceiling? They feel that Congress can't relate to the people, they don't care about the people. Will Congress meet the August 2nd deadline?
Normally I would tell you that we would. Usually the way things work in Congress is if there's an August 2nd deadline, you expect something to happen sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. on August 3rd. This time I'm not so sure. I am very concerned about it. Our democracy, our legislative process is about compromise, and yet we've got people now serving in Congress that refuse to compromise. And we'll see what happens. I hope and pray that we get this thing resolved before August 2nd, at least short term. If we don't, I fear that the worst will happen. Economists predicting that we might be looking at double-digit interest rates and unemployment and a stock market crash. And I think the fact that the Republicans are refusing to compromise, I think they're playing with fire, and I think it may very well backfire on them. I saw a poll Friday that said 58% of the Republicans thought the Republicans in Congress weren't doing enough to compromise. Between trying to privatize Medicare and the things that are going on with this debt ceiling negotiation, I think it could very well be a good year for Democrats next year.
So is it just a partisan issue? What's the reason it's not passing yet? Is it just because of...
Well, the Republicans refuse to compromise. When the president's willing to put things as sacred as Social Security and Medicare on the table for future reforms, and to say he'll cut spending, $2 for every dollar of revenue, and they refuse to even discuss removing tax subsidies for the big 5 oil companies, for corporate jets, for companies that ship our jobs overseas. In my opinion, that's being unreasonable. And I think that's why the polls showed 58% of the American people, 58% of the Republican people who identified themselves as Republicans, even thought that the Republicans weren't doing enough to find some common ground and compromise.